Let me tell you something before we go any further. Some of the most successful people in the world are quietly failing. Not loudly, not publicly, quietly. Because there's a kind of failure that doesn't look like falling down. It looks like you're standing on top of everything you asked for and feeling nothing underneath your feet. Success has a sound to it. Applause, numbers, titles, doors opening when you walk toward them, people saying your name with admiration in their voice. But meaning? Meaning doesn't clap. Meaning doesn't announce itself. Meaning sits with you when the room is empty and asks, was this worth becoming who you became? And that question is undefeated. We live in a culture that teaches you how to win, but never teaches you how to feel whole. It hands you a blueprint for achievement and calls it a life. It says, run faster, climb higher, prove more. And if you're disciplined enough, talented enough, and hungry enough, you'll get there. And many of you did. You checked the boxes. You stayed consistent. You outworked people who doubted you. So why does it still feel unfinished? Because success without meaning doesn't fulfill. It distracts. It keeps you busy enough not to ask the deeper questions. It keeps you moving so you don't notice you're not arriving anywhere that feeds your spirit. And that's dangerous because movement feels like progress, even when it isn't. Let me say that again. Movement feels like progress even when it's not. You can be moving fast in the wrong direction and still feel important. You can be exhausted and praised at the same time. You can be celebrated for a life that doesn't feel like yours anymore. That's not weakness, that's misalignment. I've seen people win awards they didn't even enjoy holding. I've seen smiles that were practiced, not felt. I've seen ambition turn into armor, protecting people from admitting they were empty. And I understand it. Because when you've invested years chasing something, it's hard to admit it didn't give you what you thought it would. It's hard to say, I climbed this mountain and it didn't change me the way I hoped. But that honesty, that's the beginning of meaning. Success asks, what did you accomplish? Meaning asks, who did you serve? Success asks, how much did you gain? Meaning asks, what did you give back? Success can exist without purpose. Meaning cannot. And when success outruns meaning, the soul starts to lag behind. You feel it in the quiet. You feel it when the noise fades. You feel it when another achievement lands and the excitement disappears faster than it used to. That's not because you need more success. It's because you need depth. Depth doesn't come from chasing. It comes from connection. Connection to your values. Connection to your responsibility. Connection to something larger than your own reflection. Let me tell you something real. The ego loves success. The soul requires meaning. The ego asks, how do I look? The soul asks, why am I here? And when your life is built only to impress the ego, it eventually collapses under its own weight. Because ego is never satisfied. It always needs more attention, more validation, more proof. Meaning, on the other hand, doesn't beg. It anchors. When your work has meaning, you don't need everyone to understand it. You don't panic when progress slows. You don't crumble when the applause moves on to someone else. Because you're not feeding off noise, you're rooted in purpose. And purpose gives you stamina. I want you to think about a tree. A tree with shallow roots might grow fast, look impressive, and catch attention. But the first real storm comes and it snaps. Not because it was weak, but because it never grew deep. Meaning is depth. Success without meaning is a tall tree with shallow roots. Looks good, photographs well, but it can't survive pressure. And pressure always comes. Some of you are living lives that look successful from the outside but feel fragile on the inside. You're one setback away from questioning everything, one quiet moment away from restlessness, one honest conversation away from realizing you've been avoiding yourself. That's not a failure to be ashamed of. That's a wake-up call. Because the goal isn't to abandon success. The goal is to give it a spine. Meaning doesn't slow you down. It steadies you. It allows you to say no without guilt. It allows you to walk away without bitterness. It allows you to rest without feeling like you're falling behind. When success is rooted in meaning, you stop chasing approval and start honoring responsibility. You stop asking, how far can I go? And start asking, how true can I be? And that changes everything. Because at the end of the day, when the titles fade, when the numbers stop mattering, when the room gets quiet, you won't be measured by how impressive you looked. You'll be measured by whether your life stood for something, and that's where real success begins. My have sent 70 mana the back down waited with a 70 pros, and we have in 70 doggle stations not shouted, not defended, not explained. Enough. Most people never say that word out loud. They chase until their bodies ache, until their relationships thin out, until their joy becomes something they remember instead of something they feel. They keep running because they're afraid that if they stop, the world will forget them. But listen to me. When your life has meaning, enough becomes a declaration of strength, not surrender. Enough said, I know who I am without the scoreboard. Enough said, I don't need to bleed to be valuable. Enough said, I'm no longer confusing exhaustion with excellence. Success without meaning never feels like enough. It keeps moving the finish line. It whispers, just one more win, one more title, one more upgrade. And you listen because you've been taught that hunger is a virtue, but hunger without purpose turns into consumption, and consumption without conscience turns into emptiness. Meaning changes that relationship. When meaning enters your work, you stop asking, what can I get? You start asking, what am I here to give? That question rearranges a life. Because when you know what you're giving, you stop measuring your worth by what you receive. You stop checking the room to see who noticed. You stop bending yourself to fit applause that doesn't feed you. You stand differently. You speak differently. You move with a kind of quiet authority that doesn't need permission. I've learned that the most dangerous thing isn't failing early. It's succeeding early at the wrong things, because then you build momentum in a direction that doesn't honor who you really are. And momentum is hard to turn around, but it's never impossible. Meaning doesn't ask you to erase your past. It asks you to reinterpret it. Every skill you learned, every discipline you built, every sacrifice you made. Meaning, it says, now aim this at something that matters. Because achievement is neutral. It's what you point it toward that gives it weight. Some of you have sharp tools and no mission. Some of you have power and no compass. That's why it feels off. Meaning doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels like responsibility. Sometimes it feels like choosing integrity when nobody's watching. Sometimes it feels like turning down what looks good so you can say yes to what feels right. And that's not glamorous, but it's grounding. Let me tell you, that meaning gives you that success alone never will. It gives you peace in stillness. It gives you clarity under pressure. It gives you dignity when the spotlight moves on. Meaning lets you age without panic. It lets you evolve without fear. It lets you walk away without bitterness. Because you were never chasing attention. You were answering a call, and calls don't expire. A meaningful life doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Some of the most impactful people never trend, they never headline, but they change rooms, they shift conversations. They leave places better than they found them. That's legacy. Not what you collected, but what you contributed. Not how high you climbed, but who did you lift? Not how impressive you looked, but how deeply you lived. Success asks for witnesses. Meaning asks for courage. And courage shows up in small moments, in choosing honesty over image, in choosing depth over speed, in choosing alignment over applause. That's where enough lives. Enough isn't settling. Enough is clarity. Enough is knowing when more would cost you something, you're not willing to lose your values, your presence, your peace. So if you're listening to this and something feels tight in your chest, let that be information, not judgment. It might be telling you it's time to realign, to redefine what winning actually means to you. You don't need to burn your life down. You just need to re-anchor it. Ask yourself tonight, no noise, no distractions. Does my success have meaning? Does my work feed my spirit? Does my life reflect what I believe? If the answer isn't clear yet, that's okay. Clarity comes to those who are willing to listen. And when you finally build success on meaning, you won't feel the need to announce it. You'll feel it, steady, quiet, unshakable. Because when meaning leads, success follows with humility. And when the room goes silent, when the world stops watching, you'll still be standing in a life that feels true. That's not loud success. That's real success.